Morning, everybody. Morning, everybody. West Falls Church. Morning, everybody joining us. Grace Live. Two things that are funny. One, I just get to be a part of a sermon series called 2020 Vision. I don't know if anybody's got a pretty serious correction out there, but take my contacts out, and I'm not seeing anything. I'm at a minus 7.5. I know. Pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Second funny thing I wanted to share. This past Monday, Robin and I had put the kids down to bed, and we were kind of just sitting, we were talking about the week, and I told her that I was working on a message about radical patience. And without any hesitation, she said, "It's going to be pretty hard for you, won't it?" I said, "That's rude." She said, "Well, try not to spit so much when you talk." And I said, "I get excited. Come on. Killing me." So this is the final message in our series, 2020 Vision. Look, we're after experiencing life like never before by seeing Jesus like never before. We're tracking the account of Jesus' life that was written by a man named John. It's called the Gospel of John. We're in the first chapter. We're kind of ending the first chapter today. And I'm excited to jump right in. So let's do that. I'm reading from John chapter 1, verses 43 through 51. And John tells us this. He said, the next day, and this is the day after Jesus' initial, he's now recognized as being Jesus, being the Messiah. There was this baptism moment. John the Baptist had called him out, and he started calling disciples. He'd called a few disciples, and here we are. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now, Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." And Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" I feel like Nathanael pulled a page out of my playbook. When we're talking about Washington Liberty High School, I often ask the same question. W&L, folks. Can anything good come out of W&L? My Wakefield people like that. Come on. Nathanael said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." And actually, I think Nathanael's response is pretty funny here. Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" If I'm walking up to Jesus and he says, "Behold, a man in whom there's no deceit," I probably would look behind me. Do you have the right guy? But not Nathanael. He's like, "Yeah, that sounds like me. How do you know me? How do you know me?" Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." And I love this next part. It's like a dramatic mic drop statement. It's like, think of the opening scene of a movie, and it's the opening montage, and there's lots of action, and the music is building to the end of the first scene. There's an initiation moment where Christ is identified, and the music begins, right? And the music builds as Jesus is walking and calling people to follow him. And with every disciple that's called to his side, the music intensifies. It peaks when Jesus says to Nathanael that you will see greater things than these, and then it's quiet. And the music stops. And right before the scene closes, Jesus says to him, verse 51, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." Close scene. Next scene, Jesus is at a party. He's at a wedding party, and he's about to do something crazy, right? And the action starts. But that's for next week. This week is all about this final statement of chapter 1, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Jesus saying, hey guys, from here on out, everything is going to be different. Your life is going to change dramatically. You will never be the same. You're never going to see the world the same. I'm going to teach you how to see what I see. And I'm going to give you the power to see how I see. And Jesus does something really cool. And he makes a reference to a story that his disciples would know right away. When he talks about angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man, he makes a reference to the story in Genesis chapter 28, a story that involves a patriarch of their nation, one of their fathers, their distant fathers, Jacob. And in Genesis chapter 28, there's a story in which Jacob is sent to find a wife, and he's journeying, and he gets tired, and it's nighttime, and so he takes a rock and he falls asleep, and during the night he has a vision. And the vision is of a staircase that connects the ground to the heavens, and on it, angels of God are descending and ascending. And Jesus makes reference to this moment and this vision. And he does so intentionally, and this is actually really important, and it's really cool, and it's really powerful, because what Jacob experiences in this vision is actually a promise. So I actually want to read something to you and give you a little challenge, okay? In Jacob's vision from Genesis 28, the one Jesus is referencing, the Lord stands at the top of the staircase, and he says words to Jacob. And he offers a promise. I'm going to read it. I want you to see if you can count how many promises are in this, okay? See what you can do. So it says this in Genesis chapter 28, talking about the staircase that's in Jacob's vision. It says this, there above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on the earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. How many? Did you count? How many did you get? 5, 6, 7? On my count, I might blend a couple together. I'm going with 6. The correct answer is 6. If you like to have the correct answer, you can dispute that later. Here's what's cool, and this is why this all matters. The story that Jesus is referencing is a story in which there are 6 promises about where Jacob's life is heading. It's 6 promises about where all of this is going. Jacob, you need to know where your life is going. Jacob, you need to know where this is headed. You need a glimpse of what is coming and what is at the end. It's about promises being fulfilled. It's about intentions being shared and completed. And it's huge that Jesus quotes this because Jesus knows the life that he's calling his followers to. Jesus has just called his disciples, and they're about to get started with this life that he's called them to. And he knows the kind of life that it is. And it's a life that's not characterized by wealth and comfort. It's a life that's not characterized by resting on your laurels and taking it easy. It's a life that is characterized by sacrifice and patient endurance. And Jesus says, hey, you guys are going to receive some special insight into where all this is going, where it's headed. You're going to see the end, and you're going to need to, because the life I'm calling you to, it's not going to be easy. Jesus says it's all about seeing. And so our message today is this. It's our one fill in the blank. Radical patience comes from what we are able to see. Radical patience comes from what we're able to see. I love this. I love talking about it because it's really actually both common sense and an incredibly deep spiritual truth. It's common sense that patience comes from what we can see. A couple years ago, I was on a flight, landed in DCA. There was no gate for us to taxi to. 2 hours I sat on that plane. Yes, it was a long time, okay? But here's the deal. That plane was actually not full of impatient grumblers. People were being pretty cool, because within the first 5 minutes, the captain got on the plane and he started giving us information. And then another 5 minutes later, the captain got on the PA and started giving us information. 10 minutes later, more information. 20 minutes later, more information. And they decided very early on that if we're going to enable people to be radically patient with us, we need to help them see where this is headed. We need to help them see where this is going. So information about flights that couldn't take off because of weather at destinations was meaningful. Flights that couldn't take off because of mechanical problems was meaningful, it was really helpful. But the most helpful thing of all was actually, after about an hour, they let us know that we should check our emails because we were going to receive a $300 credit. So I was like, yeah, like 2 hours, $300, you're paying me $150 an hour? I'll sit here all day. Alaskan Airlines, I'm good. Just let me go to the bathroom every couple hours. I'm good. But radical patience comes from what we're able to see. Same is true with traffic. Look, traffic, when traffic catches you off guard, it surprises you, you can't see why it started, and you can't see how long it's gonna last. Oh my goodness, it's so painful. But we got these devices and these little lines that are red and blue and green. And come on, how much easier, we can suffer it so much better. Oh, I know this slowdown is gonna last 4 minutes and it's blue. I'm good. So radical patience comes from what we're able to see, but beyond common sense, this is actually a really deep spiritual truth. And it's one that the Bible addresses over and over and over. The Bible talks so much about our thriving and how much our thriving comes from what we're able to see. The Bible is this amazing collection of writings that are centered on one main character, the Christ, Jesus, but along the way, it digs deeply into the condition of mankind, collectively and individually. And one of the conditions that it digs into deeply is that of sight. Blindness, not seeing, perceiving, not perceiving. Hundreds of times, it's all over. And in a message about how patience is made possible by what we're able to see, that includes how we see ourselves. It includes how we see ourselves. You could argue that it almost starts with how we see ourselves. So the first passage that came to my mind was something that the Apostle Paul actually wrote to the church in Rome. And I'll just read it to you in Romans 12, chapter 3. The Apostle Paul wrote this. He said, "Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment. Do not see yourself as higher than you are, but rather see yourself accurately." Paul says it's really, really important that you see yourself accurately. And he addresses a problem that they're dealing with in the church. And he says you've got to see yourself accurately with sober judgment. Here's the deal, because how you see yourself really matters. Radical patience comes from what we're able to see. And how we see ourselves affects our ability to be patient. When I think of myself too highly, it's going to cause me problems. If I'm blind to my issues, it's going to cause me problems. Years ago, when Robin and I first started coming to Grace, and I remember this very clearly. Okay, Derek disputes this. Okay, Pastor Derek disputes this. Actually, let's just time out real quick. Everybody say hi to Pastor Derek. Pastor Derek is joining us on Grace Live. Hey, Derek, good to see you. Hey, if you're on Grace Live, show Derek some love right now on the little message board. Let him know how you feel about him, if you love him. Otherwise, keep it to yourself. Okay, but Derek disputes this, but I remember this distinctly, and there's a reason I remember it. When we first started coming to Grace, there were like 3 sermons in a row when Pastor Derek used the exact same illustration to make his main point. Okay, I'm telling you, the exact same one. Okay, and I don't know what was going on. I mean, maybe he was going through something, maybe he wasn't sleeping well. I don't know the deal, but, and you remember, maybe you remember this, okay? Pastor Derek, he used this illustration, and every time his main point was, it was illustrated by his hatred for that moment that you go to load the dishwasher and it's still full with clean dishes that need to be emptied. This was like the bane of Pastor Derek's existence for a season of life, and it showed up in every single sermon. So I'm here, Robin and I are pretty new to grace, and we're sitting in the congregation, and Pastor Derek starts talking about being in the kitchen, and I'm like, oh, here we go. It's the loaded dishwasher story again, okay? We're gonna talk about the loaded dishwasher, okay? And Derek disputes that he did this so much, but I remember, because here's what I remember. At the time, Robin and I were living in this tiny little apartment, and we had no dishwasher. So I'm like, Derek, you need to stop complaining about this loaded dishwasher, because you know what a loaded dishwasher means? It means you have a dishwasher. And I thought to myself this, the story has a point, okay? If I had a dishwasher, I sure would not be complaining. If I had a dishwasher, I sure would not be complaining. Now, here's the funny part. About a year later, Robin and I got one of those roll-up dishwashers. The one you stick in a corner of your kitchen. When it's time to do dishes, you roll it up to the sink, you plug it in, you hook it up to the faucet, right? Tube's empty in the sink. When it's all done, you roll it back. When it's done, and we had this thing for about a month. And I kid you not, the very first time I went to load it and it was full of dishes, I was super annoyed. So the joke's on me. Like, I get that. And it seems silly, but in a way, it's serious. Like, I perceived myself more highly than I ought. That thing you struggle with wouldn't be a struggle for me. That thing you do that's causing me to be frustrated and impatient, I'd never do that. I'd know better. I'd be better. But I had blind spots, and blind spots affect everything because I'm not seeing myself clearly. And radical patience comes from what we're able to see. Everybody, here's a scary prayer. Here's a scary prayer. Lord, I know I have blind spots. Where are they? Will you show me? Lord, I know I have blind spots. I'm inviting you to do what you need to do to help me see them. It's a scary prayer. But I'm confident that it will translate into a clearer view of ourselves, which will translate into being more patient with others. Because radical patience is made possible by what we're able to see, and it starts with how we see ourselves. And here's the thing, I don't want to miss this. And before we get the sense that this is all about being patient with other people, let's be real about the fact that some of us here this morning most need an encouragement to be patient with ourselves. Because for some of us, our greatest struggle is not impatience with others and others' condemnation, but self-condemnation, beating ourselves up, frustrated with ourselves, hatred of ourselves. I'll never forget the moment I was really struggling with this. I was impatient with myself. I was struggling with self-condemnation. I was seeing myself super negatively. And I'll never forget the moment I realized that Jesus was able to see a version of me that even I couldn't see. Sophomore year of college, I was on the floor of our bathroom. I was sick as a dog because of a long night of partying. I felt gross, but beyond that, I was embarrassed. I was disappointed in myself. I was angry with myself because of this ongoing dialogue I had been running, this running dialogue I'd been having with myself about who I was and why I was alive and who God had made me to be. And here I am again, and this had become a pattern. And I'll never forget the moment when I was on the floor of that bathroom, laid low, physically, felt terrible, emotionally, spiritually, and heard a small voice. Not audibly, but clear as day. It was a merciful, gracious voice of Jesus, and he said, Matt, stop acting like this changes anything between us. Stop thinking that this changes anything about the plans I have for you. And the reality is that when I saw a me that was, for all intents and purposes, broken and worthless, he saw a me that was invaluable and useful. Jesus saw a version of me that even I couldn't see, and it helped me be patient with myself while God did his thing in my life. while he continues to pace out the transformation that he has in mind for me. So can I encourage you this morning, if you're here and that's your struggle, Jesus sees a version of you that you can't even see yet. Can I convince you of that? Radical patience is made possible by what we're able to see. Jesus is radically patient because of what he's able to see. Just a classic Jesus story to kind of take us to the finish line of the message this morning. You've got Jesus, and he's on a boat with 12 of his disciples. He's headed to a place they didn't want anybody to know about because they were absolutely wiped. They were exhausted in every way, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It had been a grueling week for Jesus and his disciples, a week of work that was punctuated by the devastating news that Jesus' family member, John the Baptist, had been beheaded. But Jesus and his disciples are fighting through, they're staying on mission, they're serving people, they're healing people, they're teaching people. Mark tells us this story in chapter 6, starting in verse 30. He says this, that in the midst of all of that, the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. He said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Jesus is like, guys, we're exhausted. This week has been rough. We're hungry. We've been going nonstop. We need food. We need rest. We need quiet. So Mark continues, verse 32, he says this, "So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But," or it should say they tried. Verse 33, "But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them." And you can imagine the disciples with Jesus. Man, it doesn't stop, does it, Jesus? Can we go back to the middle of the water and just drop anchor, catch some sleep on the boat? Maybe you can make some food appear out of nowhere or something. Call some fish to jump up into our boat so we can eat. I don't know, but just, it doesn't stop. Verse 34, but it says this. This is so cool. Jesus is, he's amazing. "When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because he saw them as sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things." Look, and this is all me, but I often think about different ways that Jesus might perceive humanity. You know, I kind of force my human lens on him and like sometimes how I see people. And I just think about this, like Jesus, he shows up and his disciples show up and they want to get away. They just want to be alone. They just want to rest. They just want to eat. And there's a crowd of needy people right there. If Jesus saw them as work, and he probably would have been irritated. If he saw them as a lost cause, he probably would have felt nothing. If he saw them as an obstacle to his meal or his peace or his quiet, his me time, he would have had no patience. And he would have chosen a different course of action. But even bigger, and I know this is all me, but I'm like, doesn't Jesus ever get tired of people? Like, my vision for the world would be so much easier to accomplish if it weren't for all these needy, messed up people. But that's just me, how I see people sometimes. I remember, and just a quick aside, but one of the first years I was teaching in DC public schools, one of my constant prayers was this, because I struggled with some patience with those kids. It was tough. My constant prayer, help me see these kids differently. Because so often in a moment in the classroom, in the midst of misbehavior, in the midst of chaos, all I could see was a group of kids who were making my mission more difficult. And I often found myself with such little patience for them. But my prayer was this, Jesus, help me see. And I'd been praying this prayer for a while, and I'll never forget what happened. I had a student named Tiara. Smart kid. really bright, fun, tons of personality, super capable. But Tiara had been showing up late to class all week, unprepared, totally disruptive. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, same thing, same story. Showing up unprepared. I don't have a pencil. I don't have a paper. I don't have nothing. I don't care. I'm just going to come to class. I'm going to goof around. I'm going to make your life miserable. I'm going to make your job difficult. And I had enough. And so Thursday morning, Tiara comes in again with nothing, but she was extra late. And this particular day, man, I remember it. I'll never forget this. The class was working. It was calm. Like, work was being accomplished. I was feeling good. And Tiara shows up at the door. And I'm like, oh, this is going to mess everything up. No pencil, no paper. She's late. I didn't have patience for it, so I sent her to the office. I sent her to the office and say, hey, look, we're working in here. 5 minutes later, she's back with the assistant principal. And so I opened the door, and the principal asked me to step out into the hallway, where she informs me that Tiara and her mother had been sleeping on the street the last 3 nights. So I had all the patience in the world for Tiara. All the patience in the world. The radical patience is made possible by what we can see. Like, Jesus was exhausted. He was hungry. He was heartbroken. All he wanted was a meal and rest. When the crowd needed him, what did he do? Patiently taught them. He had compassion on them. He says, these are sheep without a shepherd. They're lost, they're vulnerable, they're underprovided for. And I'm the shepherd, and I provide direction and provision and protection. It's what I do. So he began teaching them many things. Like, Jesus is so good. He sees so clearly. Here's our challenge. Here's our challenge. And it's not to be more patient. It's not try harder to be patient. You need to stop trying to be more patient. Start asking what needs to change about how I see. How I see myself. How I see others. Jesus, here's the prayer again. Here's the challenge. Jesus, I have blind spots. Jesus, you're invited to do whatever you need to do to get rid of them. Give me a vision for where all this is going. Give me a vision for where this is headed. Help me see more. Help me see bigger. Second thing we might think about doing. Come on, more than think about it. Parker's been talking about it this morning. He's going to talk about it again. Join a group. The absolute best people in my life are the people I've been in groups with who will ask me hard questions, who will get to know me and get a sense for my blind spots, who will encourage me to see bigger, see differently. Come on, being in a group is a really big deal. So take advantage of this. They're open now. Finally, the last challenge is this, and maybe this is for somebody who has never really taken advantage of Jesus' offer. Because he's offered to give each of us a glimpse of where this is all headed. One of the central claims of Christianity is that Jesus came to the earth to write the end of our story, to write the end of my story. And so I just get to live it out. Because the claim is that if I allow it, if I accept it, his story becomes my story. His story of resurrection, his story of redemption, his story of eternal life, his story of a kingdom where everything's been restored is my story. It's a story where death is defeated, restoration is complete. Look, he's offered to begin this work in me and in you. It's a work that he's promised to carry on to completion. It's a work that includes transforming how we see. And so maybe this morning, the challenge for you is to take advantage of Jesus' offer and invite him to have that place in your heart, in your mind, that we might see, that we might be a community of people who are radically patient because we see things in a neat way. Will you pray with me this morning? Jesus, we acknowledge that so much of this is mysterious. God, the fact that as humans, we can believe that we're seeing so clearly, but be so blind at the same time, so convinced of the accuracy with which we're seeing. Lord, will you help us in that? Lord, will you do what only you can do and bring about in our lives a clearer view? God, help us see our blind spots. Help us see others differently. Help us see ourselves differently. God, help us to trust that you see versions of us that even we can't see, and it's good. Lord, we pray for this year, 2020 vision. God, we want to experience life like never before by seeing you like never before. Lord, we invite you to do something special. God, help us this week. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Matt. Matt said it. I want to ask it again. What version of yourself do you see? How do you see other people? Our prayer for you is that God would transform something powerfully inside of you, that you would see yourself and see others differently. He mentioned how the importance of groups, having people in your life to do that is essential. So I want to encourage you one last time, just go to trygrace.org/groups. It's a fun new website. You can kind of scroll very nicely, see all these group options. It's very pretty. But more importantly, get connected with a group. Find one that works for your schedule. Find a group of people that you can do life with that will celebrate and confirm those moments in your life so that you're not alone. You get the greater glimpse of God when you do. If you're interested in that last challenge, as Matt said, of connecting with God and kind of taking that story on for yourself, our prayer team would love to connect with you and pray with you. If you're on Grace Live, we'd love to pray with you. Just hit that prayer button. And then if this is your first time, want to invite you to Grace in 5. It's our opportunity to invite you and meet you and share more about who we are in less than 5 minutes. Hope you'll be able to connect with us there. Next week starts our new series, Who Are You? Finding the True You, talking about seeing yourself differently, seeing Jesus differently. You'll want to come back and bring a friend. Thank you guys so much for being here. See you next week.